Like I said, what happened yesterday doesn't matter anymore, because today, at the time I'm recording this video, Jax is already in the lead, and even though the vote gap is tiny, considering the results are coming in tomorrow, it's getting more and more interesting to see who's actually gonna win this award. But what really came out of nowhere was Kinger suddenly jumping into the race for first place, and even if it looks like he's got way fewer votes than Pomni or Jax, if we follow the trend, it becomes pretty clear that the gap's shrinking more and more every day. And if we remember the start of the voting when Kinger was actually in second place, then I'm sure the hardcore fans of this so-called lunatic are gonna do everything they can to make him win. I called this in my previous videos. Ragatha dropped down to 6th place, trailing by just under 100 votes at the time I'm recording this. Let's agree not to seriously count Kane as a real contender for this award, and with that kind of setup, I'd love to put together my own personal ranking of the characters. But before I do that, I'd be crazy curious to hear what you think, and I'd be super hyped if you dropped your own character ranking from 1st to 6th place in the comments. I think it'll be more fun to start from 6th place, and as sad as it sounds, that's where I've got Gangle. I've got nothing against her, but honestly, she's just a bit boring to me, and even if we think back to episode 4, which was all about her, aside from the usual dose of meltdowns and sadness, all we really saw was that classic tiny boss syndrome. Again, I'm not a Gangle hater or anything, it's just that characters like her don't really grab my attention. For 5th place, I spent a while trying to decide between two characters and ended up going with Zooble, and here's why. Zooble's probably the most chill and balanced character out there. She's not out here trying to please anyone or stand out from the crowd. She just lives the way that's comfortable for her, and yeah, that might make her seem kind of boring, but honestly, she's probably the most, if you can call it that, wise out of everyone. Plus, we still don't really know that much about her. In 4th place, I think it's fair to put Ragatha, and the whole issue with her is that she's trying to come off as someone she's really not, and honestly that kind of pushes people away. I totally agree with that monologue Jax dropped during his talk with Pomni.
Doesn't she get on your nerves sometimes?
I mean, she's nice to everyone.
I don't know. I think she tries way too hard. Like, we're stuck in... Why are you always pretending everything's always fine? Like, if you tell someone they're loved and appreciated every day, it just kind of loses all meaning.
In a place like the amazing digital circus, a lot depends on honesty, and Ragatha just doesn't really fit that vibe. I think Kinger totally deserves 3rd place, at the very least because he brings that perfect kind of absurdity that the digital circus would honestly feel way duller without. Plus, I actually really enjoy watching his antics. And it totally makes sense that these two characters would end up taking the top 2 spots, and in my personal ranking, Jax lands in 2nd place. He's honestly a really cool character with his own sense of humor and way of living. He's probably the most popular one in the whole digital circus, but for some reason Pomni is the one I see as the best character out there. I genuinely enjoy watching how she's changing, how she's building connections with others, and how she's slowly starting to accept the rules of this whole game. I'd really love to see your rankings in the comments, and I'm super curious to look back at all this after episode 6 drops and see how much our rankings might shift. While we're waiting for the results of the Digital Circus Awards, I'd like to go over a few interesting details that are directly connected to episode 6. Everyone remembers that right after episode 5 dropped, we got that teaser with a very curious caption hinting that episode 6 won't take half a year, and just recently Goose actually confirmed it on Jobby the Hong's podcast, where she officially said that the worst case scenario is 4 months. And even then, she kept dodging the question while hyping us up with stuff like, "I'm so excited for this episode." And if 4 months is the absolute worst case, then the final possible date would be October 20th. On that same podcast, Goose mentioned that episodes 3 and 4 were developed at the same time, and then added that the same thing is happening now. Not just for episodes 5 and 6, but she even hinted at episode 7. That means within the next 6 months we could get 2 new episodes, which is honestly insane. But for now, let's stay focused on episode 6. Considering the fact that 2 episodes were already being developed at the same time before, and back then the gap between episodes 3 and 4 was just a little over 2 months, it's easy to say that following that logic, episode 6 should drop sometime around late August. But honestly, I'm leaning more toward the end of September, because with every new episode the quality keeps getting better and better, which obviously means more time is needed to make each one. Aside from episode 6, episode 7 is also already in development, and taking all that into account, the last Friday of September feels like the perfect release date for episode 6. Like I said, Goose has mentioned multiple times that the new episode's gonna be absolutely insane, and she can't wait for everyone to finally see it. And what's really interesting is that Glitch has also been teasing us, just in a slightly different way. We've got a few hints that we might finally see Kaufmo not just as a cardboard cutout or abstracted monster, but as a full-on character. Still, it's important to say I don't believe Kaufmo's alive or coming back in episode 6 because we clearly saw his abstracted form and how Kane moved his body into the cellar. After 5 episodes, we get that Kane can do literally anything inside the digital circus, but the system itself works in a way that whenever someone gets abstracted, a new character takes their place, and I don't think that's going to change. However, these Kaufmo mentions, even if there's no real proof, make things way more interesting, and if you remember, the pilot showed us Kaufmo had a pretty good connection with Jax, so his appearance in some kind of flashback is almost guaranteed, and honestly, that's more than enough for me to finally get who Kaufmo really was. I've already said it a bunch of times, and I'm not going to repeat it again. Episode 6 is mainly about Jax, no matter what anyone tries to say, and that actually reveals another big thing about this episode. Since the focus will be on the real Jax, both Kaufmo and, more importantly, Ribbit, are a key part of his past, which means their appearance, at least in some kind of memory, is almost guaranteed. And while we've kind of figured things out with Kaufmo, the Ribbit stuff is way more interesting because I already made a video where I proved that Weird Mannequin is 99% likely to be Jax's old best friend. And if we bring up that recent strange situation in X, an unknown user posted something, and in response, Goose hinted that it's better not to talk about it. And if we look at this comment right here, then most likely that post was referencing the future of the digital circus where one of the characters might turn into an abstracted monster. A lot of signs point to Ragatha being the unlucky one, and let's be honest, right now that sounds way more like the truth than a stretch, especially if we look at her mental state not just in episode 5 but in previous episodes too. Everything's clearly building up to something awful happening in the digital circus, and as we all remember, episode 5 basically marked the end of the calm era. From now on, it's going to be pure chaos. And what better way to kick off that chaos than someone from the main cast becoming abstracted and a new or returning character taking their place? It's a bold take for sure, but I genuinely believe Ragatha might actually become abstracted in episode 6. And if we logically connect this with the fact that episode 6 is supposed to focus mostly on Jax, the chances of this happening multiply. And now I'll explain why I'm so sure about it. We all remember how important Ribbit was to Jax, and it's obvious Ribbit will play a big role in episode 6. The only question is in what form. If we trust the theory that the mannequin is actually Ribbit, then the most reasonable idea is his full return to the digital circus after Ragatha's abstraction. Basically, it's the shortest path. All it takes is transferring consciousness from the mannequin's body back to Ribbit's real body. Now imagine if that really happens. That would be pure chaos. What do you think about this? But even that isn't the craziest thing that might happen in episode 6, because besides Jax, Kaufmo, Ragatha, or Ribbit, we have the main character not just of a single episode, but of the entire show. Of course I'm talking about Pomni, who as you can see has become a kind of replacement for Ribbit for Jax. And honestly for me that's surprising, not just because Pomni almost always reacted to Jax like that.
How you doing?
Everything's been... I'm doing fine.
And also because throughout all the episodes, Jax treated Pomni pretty roughly. Maybe he wanted to be sure about something. Maybe he was testing how similar Pomni and Ribbit are. And if we recall the original concept art of Pomni and look again at Ribbit, it becomes obvious they're basically the same character split across different time frames within the digital circus. Just imagine what will happen if Ribbit returns to the already established friendship between Pomni and Jax. I think this topic needs to be explored in much more detail in future videos. But for now, let's get back to something simpler. A while ago, Goose revealed a random phrase of Jax in episode 6, and it seems Jax will clearly be unhappy about something, and I think it's about the initial adventure of episode 6, which will most likely be changed, let's say, at Jax's request. That makes sense because right now Jax is the only character whose past and present we know very little about, and I think his adventure will be the perfect start to fully reveal Jax. Also, if we remember Jax's main weakness, so I'm more than sure it's going to be crazy fun, and maybe even dangerous. I'm waiting for your thoughts and theories about episode 6 in the comments, and I'll see you real soon in the next videos.